think if you're bullish on Avalanche, it's very difficult to not be bullish on Platypus. And if you're bullish on Platypus, I think it's becoming very, very difficult not to be bullish on Vector. Disclaimer, the contents of the show is for informational purposes only. Nothing here is financial advice. Hi. Our goal with this podcast is to imagine the future of crypto. Let me introduce my co-host Jared, who's a crypto and equity trader, as well as a crypto OG. I am the head of growth for Moremoney Finance, as well as an investor in CFA Charterholder. And today we have the great pleasure of having Rev on the show, who's a core team member at Vector Finance and Magnet DAO. Welcome, Rev.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Hey, what's going on with the price of Vector?
I know, right? It's bananas. I think what has been happening, I think there's two things. I think PTP, when PTP pumps, Vector's going to pump. And then when we put out veJOE stuff, Vector just goes bananas. And I think people are really bullish on both of those protocols, and especially JOE. As JOE changed their tokenomics, you've got an enormous amount of JOE going into veJOE, just locked up. And when you've got that amount of a token becoming a liquid, really, it has to mean good things the next time, then the market takes off. And I think with Avalanche especially, who else has the momentum right now? Phantom we thought was going to be taking off, but then with Andre leaving, kind of ejecting himself from the game, seems like Phantom's really falling behind as a competitor. And so you kind of look at Terra, Avalanche as the big players, Binance, BSC maybe, but I think Avalanche has a really big momentum, and we're benefiting from that. Everybody's benefiting from that, Trader Joe included, and Vector because of that.
So do you want to talk a little bit about Magnet and how Magnet is behind Vector?
Yeah. So Magnet started out as a rebase token and also an investment in build guild and incubators. So we've got a team of folks that really Dex, the founder, brought together. He was looking for devs. He had this idea of how can we make a community-driven VC firm, basically. And he started looking in Avalanche communities, pulling in devs, pulling in marketers, et cetera, and built this core team up. And while we were building it out, the rebase model of was really, really popular. And it seemed to make sense from a fundraising goal. So when you think about you've got the treasury that's being built, you've got bonds that are happening, you can get the token for a little bit cheaper by bonding, and that's a great way to build a treasury. It's a fantastic way to raise funds. And those funds are then going to be deployed for investing, incubating, and building, and then returning that value back to token holders. And so that's how Magnet started. Really, Vector was the first big thing that we've built, and we'll probably talk about Vector in a second. But what we wanted to do was, as far as possible, reach out and get the treasury to investments, get to incubating teams, and then building. What's become immediately apparent is there's a lot of things that can be built. We're getting our tentacles out there. We're getting the token treasury out there, and what is easiest to do is really build. There's just certain requirements for investing that as anonymous developers and a community DAO, there's some limitations on that. Incubation, we've talked with a couple of teams, we've looked at some things. It's very possible, but we had this great idea for, hey, Platypus Finance is coming out. They're going to be a giant liquidity provider. They're making an incredibly new idea for single-sided asset liquidity. We got to jump on that. And so Vector kind of came to fruition from that. And the way that Magnet is supporting it is basically Magnet has provided some funds, obviously to pay for us as a team to build, but also to provide liquidity for that bootstrapping of gathering PTP so that we can build Vector and have a great base of, when you've got a lot of PTP, you're building VE PTP, and that's basically how you get that boosted yield on Platypus.
Right. And can we take a quick step back? And I'm just curious, why Magnet and Avalanche?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think with Avalanche, you've got a fantastic building community that's well supported by Avalabs. You've For me, the price of deploying things is really important. There's a lot of money on Ethereum, but it is incredibly expensive to get things off the ground. And so we, as a smaller team, said Avalanche seems to be where a lot of the momentum's going. And there's not something like this on Avalanche at the time we're launching for Magnet. And so let's go to Avalanche. It'll be much easier to do. And it's really come to fruition. I mean, it's so easy to build. It's a very well-connected community. Folks like helping each other, even in this very competitive space. I'm sure you guys know you're getting, it's a fun competition. It's not a life or death. And so that's been a big thing to see.
So I just have a question. Um, when you saw Platypus kind of emerging onto the scene, were you aware at the time that this was going to be a big thing, considering how big Curve has been in the past, and then, Convex playing into Curve, and even, Yearn to some extent? Um, what were you thinking when you saw this thing coming about and the sort of new approach that Platypus has to stable swaps?
Yeah. I think it was pretty quickly apparent that something was going to happen with Platypus. You had a lot of folks investing in it, some really great investors that have invested in other Avalanche teams and been big supporters of them. Not the investors that sit there and do nothing, but folks that are really willing to help out, market, etc., and support. And so you see that. And then you start to look at Platypus's technology of what they're doing with single-sided assets, and how they're able to do stablecoin swaps, a like-for-like asset, but also not have to pool them together in a way that if reducing risk, reducing impermanent loss. When you deposit USDC E or USDC and you want to withdraw that, you're going to get that back. You're not going to have to worry about getting a mix of them and having something depeg as badly as you would on Curve, for example. And then for Platypus, the other thing is that VEPTP model is very unique. It's, as we're seeing with this war or this PTP party going on, there's a lot of people that just want to sit there with their PTP, accrue as much as possible of VEPTP, and really let that build up. So even though there is a lot of PTP out there, most of it's not circulating, most of it's staked. And the value of it is really that it's going to keep doing that, because we're going to keep black holing it.
Yep.
Echidna's going to keep black holing it. Yield Yak is going to keep doing that. So that the PTP model, as I think we're starting to see with alternative pools, we figured that there was going to be some sort of gauge voting, just like Convex and what they've done for Curve. We wanted to get on top of that. And so when you've got incentives for providing liquidity that you don't have to pay for necessarily, maybe you're able to bribe them, work out some sort of deal, that is a pretty attractive thing, especially as a single asset. It makes it far easier to get liquidity. With the alternative pools coming out, what we're seeing is it's a super smart design of, if you've got USDC, that's great. Put USDC in, pair that with Frax, or pair that with UST or MEM, or some of the Avalanche natives in the future. And you don't have to necessarily be weighted one side equally to the other. If that imbalance happens, what PTP can do is reward the side that you need liquidity on and restore that balance, which is really unique. You cannot do that on a Curve.
I think that's a really good model.
It's an incredible model. Its Curve cannot do that as it stands right now. What happened to Curve in the future, I'm not sure, but Platypus is definitely way ahead as far as that tech goes.
Yeah, so I was gonna ask you, what's your take on Curve and what they've done on Ethereum, and then kind of how things have played into that? Maybe like what you think they've done wrong, what you think they've done right.
Yeah, I think the same thing with the VE model over there. They've done something really smart. We're stashing away a token for a long time to accrue power. The idea of power, the decision making, and the narrative around that has been really helpful for them. I think that's super positive. But the thing that, like I just said, the limitation for them is when you're pooling together assets and you want to provide the liquidity. What is in the pool really matters for them. On Platypus, it matters less. You can segment it far more. You can incentivize it differently. And so that's the really unique thing for them. And then the model for Convex built on top of that. That's what a game changer, being able to get yield for your liquidity on Curve and then hand that over to Convex and get even build on top of that little Lego pieces together. And maybe you don't want to worry about it. And so you just set it and forget it. or maybe you're an active Convex user and you're voting on Vodium all the time or doing something like that. There's a lot of ways you can express how involved you want to be and make income in different ways, whether it's passive or not. So I think that convex model is a multiplier of what VE curve already was.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I think Jared and I are really bullish on, from the beginning, we were really bullish on Platypus. We started investing in it. Actually, I think I got a very small allocation at 9 cents. And obviously, we're biased in that sense. And I think we really believe on everything building on top of Platypus. I was wondering if we could talk a little bit about the price, which is in the past 7 to 10 days oscillated between 20 cents and 120, which is now closer to that top end. I don't know if you want to comment on price or if you have any thoughts.
Yeah. As far as Vector's price goes, I think really people are starting to recognize what the convex for Platypus or the convex for more than that could be. When convex really solidified their lead on Curve, that's when things took off, and people are not only accruing Curve but accruing convex tokens. And why are they doing that? They're doing that for the power of providing liquidity and how you can shift assets around on the network. And by doing so, we've got this P versus P narrative going on, and it's actually happening. You've got communities that are gathering up the token, and I think that's starting to happen with Vector as well. People are starting to realize, as soon as Platypus puts out gauges, that's going to be a really powerful tool to incentivize liquidity, and that's something that a lot of protocols I think will find attractive. A lot of DAOs will find attractive. Retailers will benefit through bribes. And so getting on top of it, I think it's a low price. I think 100 million FDV right now is where we're at. And I think that's still low if Platypus goes where I think it's going. And then
I tend to agree with you there.
Yeah. If you think about where Platypus could go in the future, they're already adding assets. They're going to add gauge voting, governance voting, probably Q2, hopefully adding some of the Avalanche native stablecoins. I think what we've got beyond that is, even in their docs, they've got some allusions to adding like for like tokens like Bitcoin. And so when you've got that, you've got volatile assets being added, you're going to start expanding into a DEX that's really got the technology behind it, super easy to use, clean UI, cheap fees, don't have to worry about impermanent loss. I keep bulleting out these things. It's an incredible technology. And so if they succeed, we're going to continue to succeed. And I think that's what we're seeing in the price that's there. And then the other thing we're doing recently is we've been alluding to veJOE. We're going to be adding a version of JOE accrual in our protocol. We're going to add the farms to our protocol, and you're going to be able to use our accrued veJOE for boosted rewards on JOE. Yield Yak has got the first mover advantage. I think once we get out there, and it should be pretty soon, sooner than most folks realize. And once we get out there, we've got the Platypus rewards going to our VTX token. We're also going to have some JOE rewards going to VTX. And if JOE gets governance out, like they've said they're going to, we've got a token that really hopefully controls a large portion of liquidity on Avalanche, which I think I think you guys are bullish on Avalanche. I'm for sure. I think Avalanche is going to be where a lot of funds come in, a lot of new apps come in, games, NFTs. Creators are going to be, blowing the space up. Subnets are happening, and so I'm really bullish on both of those protocols. And Vector.
Yeah, people are about to be rushing into this space.
Yeah. So Vector controlling that, and the idea that Vector could be a major player in that. They're buying the token, they're locking it up. We've got something like 52% of our circulating supply right now locked up, and we don't even have governance stuff yet. They just want to make sure that they have it, they're holding it.
So I did have a question about the governance. When it comes to, for example, Platypus, I just want to know, was there a discussion around how you're going to kind of change up the system? Because, for example, somebody who's going to come in and stake their Platypus, where they would have had voting rights with their VEPTP before, now that governance right has been shifted to the VTX token. Is there any kind of concerns around that, or are you guys confident with your decision to make that?
Yeah, we're super confident, and why we're confident is I think it's a model that we've seen work on Convex. We know that we can delegate that Platypus is going to start building out that governance, and I know that they want to make sure that this is possible. But gauge voting is something they've talked about previously, and so there's going to be some sort of mechanism in the protocol itself that allows you to delegate your votes or vote the way you would like. Delegation to a larger party, like a DAO or a protocol like Moremoney or something like that, or as an individual investor, just saying, hey, I want PTP rewards to go to this, and this pool, or making governance decisions on, do I think this asset should be added, or what's my risk tolerance and the coverage ratio, et cetera, all the things that are really important to different protocols and stablecoins or different assets, you're going to be able to vote on. Now, how that happens on Vector, we've yet to get into Platypus's governance framework. We have certain ideas. We're going to continue to work with them to make sure that everything works on our end. Whether we end up going through a third party to delegate things, or we build something ourselves, there's not a votium for Avalanche yet. There's nothing that's going to take VE power and delegate it for you. So that's something that needs to get built by another team, or B, something that we'll build, which is kind of exciting either way. We get a new partner, or we get to build something exciting.
Right. Hey, can you tell us a little bit about how the veJOE decision to move forward on that product came about? Did you see it coming, or was it sort of a last minute thing? And do you foresee other such products in the future?
Yeah. So from the beginning, with Vector, we wanted our branding to be available to Platypus, but also to be something that could expand. The VE in Vector is really VE.
Right.
It's an openness to that idea. We think it's a very powerful model for tokenomics and how you distribute power and rewards. And so we were open to that. Even I believe our first medium or second medium alluded to us adding veJOE. At that point, we knew that they were doing it, and we said, if this happens and it goes the way that we think it's going to go, we should be able to add it in the future. So we as a team started watching that, waiting for documents to come out. As their docs came out, as their white paper came out on veJOE, we knew it was going to be pretty spectacular. That they've built a great system. It's very similar to Platypus in a lot of ways. They allow folks that are just starting out to boost and get in quickly. So it's not something that's hard to get into. They're adding pools week by week. They're adding more pools. So and then the promise of governance is really attractive when you think about Joe and where Joe rewards go to. There's always going to be that core of stuff that they want to incentivize, but then there'll be everything inside, and I think there's going to be some fights for that. So we as we were doing our Rocket Joe launch, we worked with Trader Joe on our Rocket Joe launch. It was a fantastic time to work with their team. They're great folks to work with, and we just got more and more interested in that. And so we kept exploring the idea. And really, as veJOE happened, we started to see, folks are getting involved. This P versus P narrative is exactly like we thought it's happening. They're accruing Joe like no other. We're seeing in certain chats, whales are talking about this. We got to get involved with this. This is going to be something that's happening. So let's go. And how we're able to do that is we have always said for our tokenomics that we'll have the base emissions and some bonus emissions that we can deploy. And we want to have flexibility on how we're doing that. And what that allows us to do is make sure that we're still able to incentivize PTP, not dilute anything too hard, but also add Joe. And so we're running at that pretty hard. And you'll see coming up for Vector, we've got a unique mechanism on how we're going to accrue Joe. I can't talk about it specifically, but we're going to have some fun stuff going on. And what we're able to do because of also this price pump, what happened with the price pump is our APRs on Vector went way up. They're actually so far up that it's like kind of unbelievable sometimes when you look at, I can get 387% for converting PTP. When weeks ago it was getting down to 200 something. And so what we're able to do is say it.
I mean, even just for locking and staking Vector, you're almost at 100% there.
Yeah, that's exactly. And
amazing.
And that's something that we really want to incentivize. I think locking it up, making sure that folks are holding, we want to make sure that folks are doing that. So we've incentivized that pretty heavily, and the conversion to get off the ground for PTP. And the same thing will happen for Joe. We'll have really good incentives to accrue a lot of Joe, and then really good incentives for holding.
So could we expect Vector to
Yeah.
be jumping on to sort of any large platform doing a vesting product in the future? And do you have other plans for other types of products, or do you want to really just sort of remain experts in this space and dominate this space?
I think right now we really do want to dominate this space, especially these two, Platypus and Trader Joe really do represent an enormous amount of trading volume, liquidity, and so dominating that space, really emphasizing that. I think there's other VE tokens out there that we are interested in and we're watching, but we'll wait and see how dominant those are. I think it's important right now to focus on the big two and do that really well. We were able to do that with Platypus really strongly from the start. Get a kind of a commanding lead, get a lot of PTB converted, TVL up, and now that we have that, we can continue to focus on them, make sure that we're adding new pools, waiting for their governance, getting involved in whatever they're going to be doing, but also now able to move into Joe pretty strongly as well. And when you've got that strong jumping point, I think it's going to be attractive to folks. To have what we hope will be the VE token aggregator protocol.
Super exciting.
It's interesting to see. I've just been watching the developments of Joe and their competition, and just over 6 months, it's like Joe has just been eating up the space. They're just attracting almost all of the liquidity to their platform.
Yeah,
Whereas, just a few months ago, you could look at, Joe versus Pangolin, and they still had a lead, but they were close enough that you could expect, it could go either way.
yeah, they've really become the dominant DEX for all assets, and Platypus is really the dominant one for stablecoins, and so
Yeah, for sure.
combining those is what a winning combination.
Do you think that Platypus, so this is kind of a sort of more of a personal opinion that I have. I think that Curve didn't make a very good effort to deploy their system on Avalanche, and because of that, this opened up the door for Platypus to come in and offer that service where I feel like Curve kind of lacked there.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think we might see Curve try to establish more of a foothold in the future on Avalanche, but
Mhm.
we'll see how that goes. I know that they've been talking about more Curve rewards coming, but what you saw with Curve is they had some AVAX rush rewards that got the liquidity there, but I don't think they've been pressing it, adding new pools, getting the factory
Yeah.
going as quickly as they could. Whereas Platypus has now got a strong presence, and to their benefit, they'll have Avalanche as a base. If Platypus looks to move out to other chains, we'll see how that goes. I wonder how the VE model on other chains could work. I believe with Curve, you've got VE on mainnet and you don't have it anywhere else.
Yeah.
So we'll see what is possible, but very interesting to watch that play out.
Yeah, that was something that kind of rubbed me the wrong way when I saw Curve getting positioned on Avalanche, and then they 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 poured it over the platform, but none of the additional features. And so you just have, the pools, and that's about it.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the reasons that we're also really strong on sticking with Avalanche for the time being as
Yeah.
a VE vector protocol as magnet. It's being able to kind of sit with the rest of this community, build really great relationships. What happens, I think, is you build those great apps and people come to them. It's getting easier and easier to move assets from network to network.
Mhm.
Once you're off mainnet, it's really easy to do it. And so the more that we can do that, the more we can build fantastic apps on Avalanche, make the space bigger by deploying subnets. I think we're going to continue to see just our TVL go up and up and up. And for Avalanche, it's fantastic to see that there's not like one or two dominant protocols. You look in the top 10, and there's some really fantastic ones with all these different features. There's no like dominant thing here that's going to attract. And then once the market has been filled, we're going to stop building the network. You've got a lot of great protocols that are continuing to build, continuing to grow. And
Yeah.
folks are moving up in TVL all the time, or new NFT spaces are opening up like hoppers, or we've got fantastic new game things happening with subnets. So it's just constantly growing, and not something that's solidifying into Avalanche is this type of network, which is going to keep pulling in people.
Yeah, it's really expanding in every direction. I had a question about the VTX emissions. What's your take on setting the liquidity mining to a 3-year sort of time frame?
Yeah, what we wanted to do is really match what Platypus was doing,
Mhm.
and I believe Joe has a similar schedule. I haven't looked at that recently, so I apologize. But you when you're thinking about liquidity mining, you have to think um, fast start, long haul.
Mhm.
You wanna get going. You want to get that liquidity in there, so make it attractive. But over the long haul, you don't want to dilute your token's worth. You don't want to put out too much, and so you really have to think about how can we get there over the long haul, and get up to speed quickly. And so I think what seems to have worked with Convex is that logarithmic emission, where you start out really strong and you're tapering down as time goes on, tapering down. And we've already tapered down once. Basically, that means reducing the emissions per second that we're putting out of VTX. And we're looking at, we've got this schedule. I think the 3-year schedule is a good one. But are we emitting too much, considering what we want to build? I think what we've seen is that it's possible to over emit. A lot of protocols do that. They dilute their token.
Yeah, that's one of my main concerns.
Yeah. And that's not attractive to whales that want to buy in and feel like maybe they're a little late. It's not attractive to retail investors who understand that 1,000% APR is just unsustainable. If you get,
Tends to lead to big crashes.
yes, 100%. As soon as somebody dumps, everybody dumps, because they know that, oh, this is it. This is when we need to exit. And so getting that APR down, tapering as time goes on, making sure that we're building new catalysts for getting folks to come in, be using us, and kind of distributing that APR at a wider base. When you do that and you have more users, you've got less of a risk of one big sell-off all of a sudden. You've got more of a base for folks saying, okay, there was this, but I'm still going to farm over here. And, these percentages, maybe together, there's a lot of emissions, but also there's a lot of users coming in. There's a lot of TVL coming in, and those fees are being redistributed. And I think that's attractive. When we've kind of have this flywheel effect going with PTP already, and we're going to hopefully crank it up even more with Joe.
Cool. Can I ask, what's your take on Echidna?
Yeah, there's a lot going on there, and I think they've done a great job. They've kept us on our feet. It's been a great competition. I think personally, the competition narrative got us off to a strong start. Everybody got involved, and now is kind of splitting what's possible.
Mhm.
I think I really like to see us continue building as a protocol and not have to worry about Echidna. At this point, I'm kind of, we're doing Platypus, we're doing Joe, we're doing Vector. And Godspeed to them. I'm really happy that there is another strong PTP accrual happening, because that's PTP bleeding black hole is good for everyone. It's good for us. It's good for Platypus, and it's good for Echidna. So great. I think Vector and its strength is that we've got a really strong team. Our community is really incredible. That we've come from Magnet with a great community, and so we have that good base, and then we're going to continue to just build on top of that, add on top of that, and I'm not super worried about that competition. I think what it does is keeps us driving towards our goal, and that's bringing value back to VTX holders, and making a really fantastic protocol for folks that want to get involved with farming for VE tokens.
Cool. Okay. So I'm just wondering, what's your take, just to continue on the Echidna topic? So we've seen that there's been a rush of collateral coming into Vector. I think you guys are Are you above 200 million now?
Yeah, I think we're somewhere around 220 or so.
Okay. So you guys have gotten a whole lot of Platypus and a ton of stables coming into your platform. And I've just been noticing that Echidna also has a pretty significant amount of PTP. The only difference is that the amount of stables that they have is a lot lower. And so basically my question is just, are you concerned about the growth of their VE-PTP over time being maybe giving them the opportunity to have like a very competitive rate against Vector? Or
Yeah.
are you more confident in the fact that you're just growing in this direction and other directions that you're going to be able to just keep floating above, any potential shifts that might come in the future?
Yeah, yeah. So we posted a chart yesterday that was comparing kind of the PTP accrual, and really what you saw is for a long time Echidna had plateaued, and Vector's PTP conversion was really taking off, going vertical. Today we've seen a ton of PTP conversion on the Echidna side. It's to be frank, it's from like I believe one wallet. So they do have some pretty intense investigator support, it seems. And
Okay.
with how Platypus has fundraised, I expect that. I expect there to be VCs who are getting involved in one protocol and the other. So I think that's recently happened. And we're on the vector side. We're working the same thing. It's like, how can we get folks who have a lot of PTP, maybe are coming from the Avalanche, or have invested in seed rounds? How can we get them involved with Vector? I think that there is a big boost to making PTP into a productive asset, and we can do that. So
Mhm.
we're trying to attract those folks in and get that continued. We continue to have a really great rate of PTP conversion, something like 130K every day for the last week at least, if not more.
That's impressive.
Yeah, and we have grown. I think we've grown the total supply that we locked up. Every couple of days, 1% more. And so when you're seeing that type of natural accrual, I think it's going to continue. I think folks have found us really attractive, for a great place to put their PTP, and we're going to continue to build on that natural growth, and look for how can we partner with other folks to continue that. Getting PTP is really important. The other thing I'll say
Mm.
is, we're the top VE PTP holder. Echidna is number 2 behind us. Right now, if things stay the same as far as our PTP, we should have a significant lead still in the future. And that's great. Like, even if they're close behind us, we're still going to have great APRs for folks that are using us. As if TVL comes in for Echidna, what you're going to see is their APRs are going to go down because it's getting distributed more widely. And so there's always going to be that back and forth of TVL, stablecoins coming in and APRs changing. What I think benefits us is we get a little bit of buy-in because we're giving some of our VTX to stablecoin depositors. I think that's giving them some assurance that they have a say on the platform and how it's going. And that also allows us to boost our APR slightly. And we're doing it with very minimal emissions right now. So it's pretty easy to continue to have a better APR, see that conversion of PTP going up. And as all of that comes together, the TVL, we get fees from the TVL, we send that to our PTP stakers. Like, the flywheel is of an asset to hold and very attractive to folks. So I think the diversification is just a benefit to Platypus, because we're going to continue to get PTP converters who want VTX, because they know that they'll get exposed to PTP and Joe now. And that's, again, the flywheel is just going to get faster and faster.
I think if you're bullish on Avalanche, it's very difficult to not be bullish on Platypus. And if you're bullish on Platypus, I think it's becoming very, very difficult not to be bullish on Vector.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what's your kind of approach to attracting people who are already on Platypus and they already have a decent mix of stables and Platypus, and they're building up their own VE-PTP over time? What's the benefit for people who may be looking at, not being so interested in switching because they've already built this up and maybe their current rates are actually pretty attractive enough for themselves?
Yeah, I think we've seen two things as we've looked at our users so far. I notice quite often that there's a mix. Folks that are in Platypus are also investing in us, or they're investing in Echidna, us, and Platypus. They're Platypus maxis, so they want exposure to everything. So I've seen that, and that usually looks like they're adding. They're not taking away from Platypus. They're adding from something else. They buy more PTP, or they've got stable somewhere else, and they're putting it with us. We've kind of started consolidating in that way. The other thing that I think we'll continue to see is I've talked with folks in our community that have come over because they realized their boosted APR is now lower than ours. We came up on them really quick with the amount of PTP that we've accrued, and that's only going to continue. When you get the amount of PTP that we have, we're the top staker. You get the PTP accrual, and that it doesn't stop. You're going to continue to see that build and build and build unless Echidna really takes off, or some other player comes in the game. We're going to continue to be number one, and we're going to have the largest share of rewards for Platypus because of that. And unless folks are able to add to their PTP and increase the amount of the PTP that they're accruing, we might catch up with them at some point. So what's attractive for me is the idea of I want to let folks know, hey, VePTP is a resource that you can max out on. Unless you get PTP and continue to accrue that, you're going to max out on that at some point 10 months later. And what happens then is Vector's going to come up on your APR and actually have a better APR because we've accrued more and we've got a bigger share. And we're continually accruing more PTP. So do you want to get in on that? And maybe be able to show them through a calculator of when exactly we'll have a better APR, or a calculator on, hey, we know you've got this amount of PTP, you've got this amount of stables. If you take your PTP, here's the APR you could get, and we'll add that up and show them very clearly. Getting on Vector right now is a smart move. Don't do this later. We're just going to continue to race up on that APR.
I think that's a very good point. At some point they'll cap out, but you're not going to cap out.
Yeah, it's that constant accrual that is really key.
Cool.
So I would start winding down the interview and ask about Magna DAO and what you guys have planned next. Is everyone sort of like all hands on Vector at this moment and not really looking at what's next, or is there already something in the pipeline?
Yeah, so on Magnet's side, we've got a couple of things that we're transitioning to, and then some future plans for us. And what we're transitioning to is we were the rebase model, and I think we've clearly seen that the rebase model, because it's so dilutive, each rebase you've got a certain percentage of the token being accrued, and folks just end up selling that off. It makes for a very bad chart. You start out really high and then immediately start tanking. Like I said earlier, it's a great way to raise funds, but we've got a good amount in the treasury, and so the community has decided. 98% of the community voted to move into a more of a VE-MAG model. Following what Platypus is doing, we're basically going to have a stake your MAG. You're not getting more MAG. There's only going to be a limited number of MAG in the future. That MAG represents your share of the treasury and the yield from the treasury. And as you leave that MAG staked, you're going to get more VE MAG. And when we build protocols like Vector, or when we invest in other projects, or incubate teams, whatever yield, profits, tokens we get from that, that's going to be going back to the VE MAG holders, and your share of VE MAG is your share of that bucket of tokens. And so I think that's kind of an attractive thing. We've got a rare asset. It's going to have a cap supply. We've got some mechanisms that we're thinking about for the future where it might actually become deflationary and rarer. And the longer you hold it, the more your share of the bucket of tokens of things that we're investing in, like VTX, things that we're building, etc. That's going to be coming back to you as a APR total, but also you'll be able to see what you're getting as far as tokens. Being able to have access to early pre-sale stuff, or access to teams that we've helped incubate, I think that's going to be really attractive. So you can imagine in the future something like, hey, VE mag holder, you own 5% of the total VE mag. Here's your share, and we're going to send you VTX. You're going to get some AVAX from things we've invested in, some JOE, some new tokens from projects that we've built or that we've been working with, and that's going to get all of it returned to you as a claimable vested reward. I think that makes it pretty attractive to hold. And then what else can you do with that VE mag? Well, you're going to be able to vote on where we're going with our roadmap, what we're building, who we're incubating, et cetera, et cetera. So you've got that power to control the protocol, which is very attractive. That informs how we're going to be using our innovation fund. So $2 million of our treasury that is allocated specifically towards investing, building, or incubating folks. Got a big say in that. And then for what's coming with Magnet itself, we've got a couple of projects internally that we think Avalanche just needs. The one I'll talk about is I think that there really is something that is needed for vesting and paying for protocol salaries, or being able to do something like an OTC deal and do it securely, completely through smart contracts, and make that really flexible and something that has a beautiful UI that you can customize for your protocol. So that's something we're looking into. There are other protocols that I think are really unique that I don't want to step into because they're unique enough that I don't want to share and end up, oh no, somebody is now developing that and we've got another competitor. So that's what I'll say too. We do have some ideas in the pipeline. We have a team that's really excited about what we're doing. And so we're looking at that. And then continuing to, one thing that we've been doing internally as a community is reassessing, okay, how can we end up investing? If there's these legal blockers for investing, what's the way to do it? There's a couple of different models on how to do it. We can have folks that individually join together and dox themselves and are the ones that sign the papers. And we could go that route, or we could just go the route of, we're not investing in early protocols themselves. Maybe we're doing more of a farm thing, or we're providing liquidity to a team in that way. Or the other route that we're building a framework out is how can we take this massive community of 20,000 people and make sure that we're equipping them, giving them things to do, taking feedback from them, allowing them to develop what they want. And so that incubation framework, we're building that out as a community as well. And how do we get everybody involved here to be part of this build guild that we've got? Because we've got the skills, we have the community, we have some funds to do it. Let's go. So exciting times.
So last question, do you have a feeling on what is a sort of better way forward for Magnet, whether it's incubated projects or doing the whole build yourself?
Yeah, I think it has to be a mix of both. I think we've also shown that we're really strong builders. So I hope that the Magnet community continues to come around that, and we've seen folks that are even in the community that are well equipped to be front end devs, well equipped to start using Solidity and doing their own thing. So the idea of a build guild is really attractive, and how we deploy that and make sure that we're distributing that work in a decentralized and efficient way. It's pretty cool to work with them already. So I think the build guild it's worked with Vector, and I think it will work again in the future on what we're thinking.
Very cool. Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, no, thank you guys so much for being here. I look forward to seeing here in the edited episode and passing it on to our community and what you're continuing in this podcast. This will pretty fun, and thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming on. It was a great talk.
Yeah, great talk. Super excited to see what happens next. Great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.